All right. Hi, everyone. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to today's webinar where my colleague Ruby Scott and I, Janice, are here to talk about and would love to answer any of your questions regarding the best practices to TMF quality assurance and auditing. A little bit about myself. I'm Janice Del Rosario. I am the Director of TMF Services here at LMK Clinical Research. I oversee the operations for the TMF services side of things and provide executive oversight to our projects. I do still also act as a TMF consultant for several of our clients. I've been with LMK for 5 years, but I've been in the industry for almost 20 years now. I'm joined here again with my colleague Ruby, and so I'll pass you over to her so she can introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar. Thanks, Janice. And I love when Janice goes first because I can say, and I support Janice. I have also been in the industry for close to 20 years now. I think I'm just now entering my 20th year. Started in 2005. I have been with LMK since 2017. And I support Janice with the oversight, the resourcing, operational activities, and whatever needs to be done. And happy to be here today with you folks to talk about TMF because that's something Janice and I can do all day long.
Yeah.
Ask anyone that we hang out with that doesn't work in TMF. Okay, so let's kick it off.
Yeah, let's kick it off with any questions that you may have, burning questions. I think that's what's great about these webinars. They're real-time responses. You get sort of our raw kind of feedback, guidance, opinions, all of it. So yeah, let's get started. Let's see what we have. Do you see it?
I don't see any questions yet.
Oh, questions. Okay.
Well, while we're waiting for the questions to roll in, there's the first question. Speak of the devil. Janice, do you want this one?
Yeah, I'll answer. How about I'll ask the question and then you can respond to this one. I think this one's a good one. What's the difference between, very good one, between an audit and an inspection?
Ooh, I like the easy ones. Well, these terms are often used interchangeably in the industry, and I've even seen guidance documents from the FDA that refer to FDA inspections as audits, or their folks that are conducting those as auditors. And the primary difference between an audit and an inspection is that an inspection is an audit performed by a regulatory agency. So if the FDA, the PMDA, the MHRA is involved, then that is an inspection. And that really is the driving difference there, that if someone is auditing, if they work for a regulatory agency, then this is an inspection. If they do not work for a regulatory agency, then that is an auditor performing an audit, whereas a regulatory auditor would be an inspector. Yeah. Clear as mud?
Yeah. Any follow-up or any other questions that come to it? I think as well for in like audits, that can be seen as an external or internal audit. So an external would be someone outside of the organization or like a third party that maybe in an organization would like to bring in to independently review and audit your TMF, as well as organizations have internal departments, whether it be from the quality assurance group or even sometimes within the TMF group, you hear the terms audit, to review the files independently, to look at it holistically. So those are also even differences or kind of just different ways to approach an audit within an organization versus just internal and external. So there's a lot of terms out there and it is used interchangeably. And I think we just have to know the difference. When you hear audit, like some of the best questions to ask is who's doing it, or what, department, what group, what's the purpose, what's the scope? Because in some regions or in some organizations, that may actually mean a little bit more versus in other cases, you freak out when you hear audit, but really it's more of a kind of, checking on your processes. So it's always good. But I think inspection is the one, that's the buzzword. That's the one where, and try not to use it loosely if it's non-regulatory body for that reason, because it is the key one. All right.
Yes, definitely.
All right. What else do we have?
Good starter though.
Yeah, great start. Oh, this is great. Please explain how you would approach a TMF audit. Um, I think this is a great kind of segue into what I was just saying, that because the audit can be approached or can actually be seen differently, that if you're talking about, say, an organization contracts like a third party, say QA independent auditor, and you as the TMF team member were the one who has to prepare for it. There's different ways for that, but then there's the other of like, if you're the one who's been tasked to do the audit of the TMF, which ones do we want to answer, Ruby? Which one would be a
Um,
good one? How would
I
you see this
I think
question?
this is more likely. This is more how would you prepare for someone else doing an audit? Just
Yeah,
because the people who are doing the audit themselves probably
probably
already have the
trained.
training.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good point. Yeah. Okay, yeah. So then, as far as how you would prepare for when an audit is announced, regardless of what it is, hopefully, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, be inspection ready.
Yeah,
That's ultimately the short answer to how
yeah.
you approach an audit. But
The
yeah,
long game is filing your documents contemporaneously, having
ensuring their quality when you do.
having set processes in place as well as robust tools to be able to perform your reviews of the TMF holistically and throughout the study. Those are the long games. Like those are the ones where you want to do it periodically so that when an audit is announced, we're not scrambling. And oftentimes for myself, Ruby, and just LMK in general, we get brought in to be able to support some of those activities because it is a rush, or it can be. So the long game is, yeah, be inspection ready, file your documents contemporaneously, look at the trends of documents coming in. Do they seem low volume as opposed to where the study is at this time, where you would expect to see a lot of documents? And if that's the case, start reaching out to your clinical trial team members. But for the immediate preparation, there's a few steps that can be taken.
Contact QA.
Again, yeah, contact QA. If you have TMF tools that facilitate cross checks, you're not going to, with the limited short period of time to prepare, really focus and coordinate with your QA in terms of like the hot spots to check in your TMF. That could be, the trial level documents that you would expect at the beginning of the trial through where it is protocol. IVs check for the key trial documents, country level and site level. That would be the high, you could start as like with your high enrolling sites, high enrolling countries, studies, sites that have been in startup for quite some time and have received drug, check that their documents are in there, the startup documents, those types of things. Really look risk-based because you have a short period of time. So rather than go into, because you could be looking at focusing on one thing for that audit, thinking that's the direction that the auditor is going to take, but it may not. So try to look at risk-based, work with your quality assurance, work with your clinical trial team members if they know the study and what some of the risks are. So to be able to hone in on certain doc types or sections. Yeah,
So
but it's all of that. Go ahead.
be inspection ready.
Yeah.
So I had time to formulate my thoughts while Janice was giving me all of the answers, and it's exactly that absolutely leverage if you have the ability to, if you have a QA department, contact QA, notify all stakeholders that are involved that there is an impending inspection or audit so that they are also prepared. And then ultimately what Janice said is it's risk-based, that you do have a finite amount of time to prepare. And if you haven't done it up until now, which is the gold standard, right? We want to ensure that we are filing contemporaneously, that our documents are quality when we initially file them, that they are compliant, that they are complete. But if you have not done that, then there is a bit of a scramble. And that is typically, that is one of the areas we are brought in to support because of the scramble, because those activities weren't done in real time as the study was conducted. Now there's this scramble of, oh my God, what do we do? And it really is notify all your stakeholders, identify your areas of risk, and try to address what you can. But ultimately, just be inspection ready at all times, and then there is no scramble, and that the non-anxiety of having known that you have managed this trial well from the start, I think, improves the quality of life for all. If there's not that crazy scramble. So I concur with what Jana said.
Yeah. Great. Thanks, Sherry. All right. Hi, Janine. Let's see. What should be included in an audit SOP, or would you only have a guidance? I think you answered that question. I think if you're specific, like an audit SOP, I think in my experience, when you get so granular in your definitions, I think in an SOP that can work towards, work for you and against you, because for you in that you do want comprehensive procedures. You want comprehensive so that there's little room for less room for inconsistencies in the ways things are being done. For mistakes, and you have like standardized activities. The where it works against you, if it's too prescriptive down to the details of, okay, we are going to audit the TMF every 6 days, like, and that's just an example, but say you put that in a procedure, you are bound for that. So you want somewhere in the middle where your SOPs give you, like, say, a frequency of how often or what your periodic reviews are going to be done, or point to a reference document like a TMF plan, how often you're going to review, but not set it so high in an SOP so that there is wiggle room, because it's understood it's a clinical trial. There's just different events, there's different activities, priorities, and high risk things that can veer the when you're supposed to do something or timeline. So the goal is that it's not too prescriptive that you can go non-compliant or risk of non-compliance, but also not so general that you have no definition and that the people that are actually doing the work don't have any guidance. So somewhere in the middle. But I would say, I think in my experience, from what's worked really well with SOPs is having sort of that end-to-end TMF SOP that covers, or an audit, including audits that cover, setup, maintenance, management, close, archive, but then have kind of the work instructions and then guidance documents to help, so that you can define those processes a little more, but not be so strict to where it is in the SOP level that you have to follow. And if you don't, you have to constantly have to do like a deviation. So yeah, I hope that answered it a little bit as far as audit, but yeah, some of the things I would say is scope, criteria, frequency. Those would be some of the key ones that, in my experience, would help if you were to perform the audit. What about you, Ruby?
I read this one the other way, and this goes back to that terminology and what people mean, but I took this as an prepping for
it's a good
an
one too.
incoming audit instead of actually performing the audit. And so I have seen a lot of these actually, and it is nice to have, again, back to Janice's point, you don't want to be so granular or prescriptive that you don't have any wiggle room, but knowing where the onus lies, who's responsible for what pieces, having that racy aspect of it, I do think eases the anxiety that just naturally comes with audits and inspections, that knowing that I have support and who those support team members are, and where the stakeholders live, as far as who do I need to contact for this? If the auditor or the inspector asks for this, who's my go-to for this piece? That having that onus in the SOP is the part that I like the best.
Yeah.
But the processes that go along with it, and that varies from company to company. And the whole question, honestly, what should be included in an SOP audit, or would you only have a guidance? I think that speaks a lot to your company's culture and how you run your business. that you might have just a guidance document, or you might have an SOP, but so long as everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, then I think that's the end goal, right? And so that's where I would lob this question. Is it depends on your company culture, or your company's environment. But whatever you have, so long as the onus is defined and people know what they're responsible for, knowing the expectations, what they're getting into, I think that goes a long way for smooth audit. As far as when it actually rolls out or comes in, then everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, and they aren't stepping over each other, or identifying gaps in the audit that, oh wow, we don't have anybody that addresses those things. That you don't want to find that during the audit, right? You want to be aware of that well in advance.
Yeah.
So definitely writing it all down will help to identify those gaps or overlaps.
And that's a great question, because with the clients that we've worked with, and the reason why we have answers like these is because we do have, it's exactly what Ruby says. It's how your organization, how they want to decide. The most important, it's documented. We have clients that do have, audit or inspection SOPs. We have some clients that do playbooks, which I like that idea, is that they have a playbook, which is, I guess, falls more under that guidance document piece that, kind of outlines that, but there's wiggle room to update. It's not a control document, that you can't update it as you go. So yeah, definitely. So we've had a lot of different, we just kind of adapt to it, and look for the key spots in those documents to be sure that TMF is covered. So we have seen a variation based on what our clients have and what we've supported them in writing and reviewing. So thanks, Janine. Great question. All right, LinkedIn user, go ahead.
What inspection trends are you seeing from the FDA on which documents they are tending to focus on? Ooh, that's an excellent question. I don't know if we're gonna have the same answer for this one. I've got two, and I don't know if I can truly answer this. What inspection? It's not like I attend 37 inspections per year, right? That there's been a handful over the course of my career. So can I really trend that? Is that data pool big enough to trend at this point? But my gimmies are qualifications documents. That's a big one. That qualifications for your site staff and personnel, definitely. But also the gimme is the internal team qualifications docs. Make sure that everybody's up to date on their training, that any training that they study, specific training that they were to do for this study has been done, that all of that is done and documented, and is available should the inspector ask, because that one truly is a gimme, right? There's no external force that's preventing you from getting that done. That is purely people doing the training, and if they're throwing out a gimme, take it. So just make sure all the training's up to date would be my number one. And then of course planning documents, that you want all of your project plans in place, your SMP, your DMP, all of the planning documents, anything with the word plan in it, make sure it's in there.
Yeah, those are great. And I think it speaks to the focus. There's been such a big focus right now, especially with ICH E6, when R2 was released and R3 is in the process, is there's been so much more focus on, from what we're seeing, vendor oversight, I think, and the accountabilities that the sponsor has to, and so that's why you've seen such a shift in where the TMF and eTMF have come into play over the last few years, is because exactly that, they're eTMFs now. So there's transparency, visibility, real-time access for auditors, and then as well as for inspectors. And so they are looking for the controls that are in place for filing, contemporaneously, because in theory, back in the paper world, there was a lot more leeway to be able to respond to those. But when you have such robust eTMS where you can file real time, that's been a major focus, is looking for controls in place to ensure, the timeliness of your filing and the completeness, and as well as all three. But I think they have more tools now to look in the TMF to look for those types of things. And they understand there's going to be gaps. You want 100%, but if you can't get it, the goal is to know what your deficiencies are and have a game plan to address it. I think so. Yeah, that's those are some of the key ones that I'm seeing, is vendor oversight and making sure that the documents of the sponsors, as well as they're overseeing the documentation, as well as the controls and processes for the third party vendors and CROs are all in there.
I want to change my answer.
Everybody, because we can go for it, do it.
Well, no,
I love it.
As far as the question goes, what inspection trends are you seeing from the FDA? That is you are spot on. That I am using old data of this has been my experience. The qualifications documents, planning documents, the gimmies. But you are 100% that vendor oversight piece is becoming huge, and it does, as far as trending goes, that is the trend. Starting with the critical findings for the TMF, actually giving the TMF the space that it needs, right? That we're actually respecting the TMF or getting there, and putting the importance that it deserves. And that is a big part of it, is vendor oversight, and that has been a push across the board. So as far as trends go, I'm switching my answer to agree with Jen.
No, but I think to piggyback, I honestly though, like your examples of actual doc text, which is the question, like planning documents, feasibility, qualification, and you think about it, that is a signal light, where if an auditor goes in there and sees that those are missing, that's exactly it. If those are missing, it's a signal to an auditor. Okay, well, where's your oversight? Where's your vendor oversight? So I think it goes hand in hand. It's never just about the documents anymore. It's what are the processes? But it's exactly that. Like those are at the beginning, at the start of a study. So if you're seeing like qualification planning documents missing, those definitely are signal alerts there, because even at the beginning, if those are missing, that already sends the auditor, or FDA, down a path of like just looking for more stuff. So again, controls the place.
And that
LinkedIn user. Yeah.
I think you're touching on a bigger part of this that I'm hoping we'll get a question eventually that is around this, but that there is the purpose overall, right, is to ensure that you are compliant. That's the reason that you are being inspected or audited. So they want to ensure that you are compliant with regulations, with local laws, with your own SOPs even, and it is a signal. They're looking to confirm that you are compliant, that your documentation does permit the evaluation of the conduct of a clinical trial. It does evidence that patient rights were protected. And if you're not compliant with the gimmies, then that is a signal that if you're not compliant, then how far does that reach? What else are you not compliant with? And so compliance, that's what they're looking for. So in order to pass with flying colors, you need to demonstrate your compliance across the board.
See.
483.
What do you think are some of the consequences? Gosh, what do I think? Yeah, I mean, loaded question, but ultimately, I mean, it could fail, like again, not being inspection ready, you can fail an inspection in terms of getting, critical major findings, and that can delay a lot of just different activities. It's actually a great follow-up to what Ruby just said right before, where it is now, and it has always been, but it's become more, again, transparent how critical the TMF, it's this whole story of the clinical trial. And so like the worst case is getting a 483 issued at the site, and then not having your documentation, not being able to provide the story of of the trial. and failing inspection and having to deal with a lot of the critical and major findings, having so many CAPAs to try to do these corrective, actions, preventative actions, it can really delay just approval, drug approval, everything. So it's one of the key components. It's like having a book and ripping out, pages. You'll never know what the full story is. And oftentimes you could just you'll end up just putting it to the side, waiting to put the pages back together while the focus is on another book. But then now that's just left there. So yeah, it's a loaded question.
Very much so. What
Makes me nervous. This is
Right?
our bread and butter. This is what our passion is. So we're not going to get there.
What do I think are some
Yeah.
of the consequences of not being inspection
Yeah.
ready? Yeah, it does. It elevates my heart rate, I'm pretty sure, just thinking about this. Well, boots on the ground, the consequences of not being inspection ready is there's going to be a more mad scramble after the inspection or the audit to address these things. And that means rework and lack of productivity and all kinds of negative, day-to-day operational folks are just not enjoying their jobs because this sucks, because we're trying to damage control a poor inspection or audit. But then from a larger scale, like Janice is saying, I mean, that can cause drug delays, and that's hugely impactful. That you not just the delays of we need to fix this stuff, but now you've brought in a regulatory agency or a third party that's got to confirm that you're doing what you need to do. And that's a whole nother stakeholder you've thrown into the mix that's going to add their own bureaucratic delays to your timelines. And so it's expensive all the way around for both the operational staff and the larger company as a whole. But nothing good. Just don't go there.
And it's also promoting. I think it's also like, and if we're talking as an individual, contributor, right? And then everyone plays a role, and just habits. Because if you're going to treat, say, one TMF and one trial that way, and that, as far as your habits go with how you maintain your documents, how you do this, you carry that on. Like if you're not correcting, again, it's accountability. That's all of it, is the consequence, is that you develop and retain those bad habits of not submitting your documents or not checking it regularly. And then that just carries over to the next trial and the next TMF and the next. And so the more that we can hone in on that and, come up with some achievable habits. And I get it, a lot of the contributors have their own roles of being another clinical trial team member. But if we can get some of those habits on the right path, and it just becomes part of your day to day, then there isn't really a constant need of feeling like you have to be inspection ready. It just becomes part of your day. That's all. That's where we're coming from with that. So it's not like there's the consequences of being penalized, but the goal is to try to have it be part of your day-to-day work.
100%. I agree with that 100%. Yeah. And how many times have we said in the last 2 decades that it is so much easier, it is so much more efficient to maintain as you go than try and fix it all at the end. And it's almost sad that when there is an inspection or there is an audit coming, that's when people are like, oh my God, we didn't do any of this stuff before. And now you're trying to make up for lost time, and you're never going to be. Sunk time is sunk time. That time is past. The opportunity to do it the right way is gone. So do what you can now, but moving forward, do it the right way so that you're not in this situation again.
Great questions, by the way, everyone. Thanks for all your participation. Okay.
What would you consider the central KPIs for your TMF, and particularly for a CRO TMF oversight? My central KPIs. I think my brain has shifted to risk-based. That it's there's not a one size fits all to almost anything.
Yeah, I think for this, and I'm looking at it from the experience of LMK and how we support or lead our clients to TMF. you hear it, and it always sounds like a broken record, but obviously the key KPIs are completeness of your TMF quality, timeliness. I think there's also aspects of, depending on what your TMF sort of like your operating model, what your resource model is. So for example, if your CROs are, I'll go based on examples or case studies. So if your TMF is where your CROs are the ones primarily responsible for submitting or processing documents and managing that piece, then there's, in addition to completeness, or like so almost like sub KPIs, if you, in addition to looking at the quality completeness TMF, you want to also build in performance indicators around their processing, the turnaround times of, documents from the time that it's received to the time that it's, processed and approved in the eTMF. So it's not to say that they're central per se. It's thinking about additional KPIs for the purpose of being able to manage your, vendors or even your organization. So processing KPIs, because again, eTMFs have from time of, creation or upload to approval. So kind of building in more to that around it kind of is a sub to timeliness in a sense, but it's its own because so that's an example of one where, in addition to your key completeness, quality, and timeliness, like you want to start to look at some of those types. And I only brought that up because, again, CRO TMF oversight. If it's in a situation where your organization does it in-house, or LMK even does TMF document processing, and if it's the CROs are doing the standard that they contribute to the majority of like site management documents, they have to perform their TMF periodic reviews. It's building KPIs around that, like what's the frequency, what are their findings, coming up with acceptable thresholds, achievable, unacceptable, knowing where you are with your TMF processes, because everyone wants to hear 95% or, but maybe you just implemented your TMF and that there's room to grow. So coming up with acceptable but also achievable thresholds to give to your TMF vendors and your CROs, I think are key ones. What do you think, Ruby? Now that you've
I
had time to
agree.
like sit, yeah,
I just did that this whole webinar.
I
I
know,
agree.
yeah,
That 100%. It's the Trinity, the complete,
no, I like
compliant,
that.
contemporaneous, completeness, quality, and timeliness. Um, those are the big three, right? But I think bigger than that is who's reporting them to you. If you've got a
Good one.
CRO doing TMF for CRO is managing your trial, if they are reporting to you that you have 95% completeness for the time point of the trial, like my question is
Good one.
the metrics are only as good as the mm, as the data you're presenting. That if you're, how are you getting that completeness score? We're 95% complete for the time point of the trial per the CRO. But if the
Good one.
CRO is not maintaining their placeholders or their EDLs, they're not doing those quality checks, where is that number coming from? And that's more my concern, is that I want to verify that the reliability of their data, even that
Yeah,
the numbers that I'm getting are accurate. That if I've got a completeness score of 100%, but my EDL only contains 5 documents, well, that's not really 100% complete then. So I do think that it
good.
is completeness, quality, and timeliness, but I want to ensure that the processes to track that data are pulling the data that I need, that are actually relevant for my specific scenario.
That's great. Yeah, the actual definition of what's measuring that KPI, like
Mhm.
what are your actual measures? Yeah,
Because
that's a
how
good
many
one.
dashboards have I seen that say this
Yeah,
this this
like
TMF
question
is
what the definition is.
95%?
Yeah, question what, because completeness, you can throw that out there, but actually ask what is that? What are these feeding into? Number of documents expected. Okay, how do you get that? How do you get the number expected versus the number that are filed? Like ask the deeper questions to these key,
Right.
KPI. That's a good
Because it
one.
could be, well, we ballpark, there would be 2,000 documents at the end of the trial, and we have
Yeah,
2,000 documents. So we're 100% complete. But that doesn't tell me that, there's 16 copies of this guy's CV in there. That,
yeah.
yeah.
Great. Thanks, LinkedIn user. Next, where are we at? We're at, yeah, 10, 20 minutes. Great. Ooh, how long does an inspection last?
That is a trick question. You didn't give me the regulatory agency. You didn't announce the inspection. You didn't say if this was pre or post. Like it's so variable. Like inspections can occur pre-approval, post-approval. They can be pre-scheduled, and you know it's coming, and this is the date, and you know months in advance. They can be surprise, though. I haven't heard about as many of those since COVID. That not a whole lot of surprise inspections going on anymore. So that's a good thing. I'll take it. I personally, I've seen anywhere from 1 to 3 days for an FDA inspection. But again, it could vary by regulatory agency, and every country in the world has one of those. Depending on what they're inspecting, the scope of the inspection could impact like how long the inspection would last. Like there's a lot of variables. Hopefully they pre-announced it, you know when it is, and they'll tell you how long it's going to last.
Yeah. And that's where it's super important, like what we just spoke about with having some sort of like inspection, either SOP playbook, however, whatever document, but it's coming up with those, like a game plan or exactly that, a playbook of knowing who, what the coverage would look like. Because it can be days to, weeks, because there's the pre-inspection, which really should be every day, but it's like the pre-inspection activity, then you have the during and post. So that can vary, but just having a playbook of who are the key players, coverage, knowing what your document collaboration space is to share the documents and make sure that those are reviewed and vetted, kind of your virtual like war rooms or things like that. So those are where it comes into play, so that you have the ability to cover the inspection period, whatever that looks like, because it could be days, it could be, a week-ish, 2 weeks. And so you just want to have that playbook in place, so you know what your coverage looks like.
Then even after the inspection ends, depending on what the output of that inspection was, there could be additional back and forths with that regulatory agency. And in my experience, anytime you need anything from the FDA, it's a minimum of 30 days. So it could extend for months as you work through whatever those outputs were.
Great question. Ooh, what is from Jenny? What is the best way to draft a TMF specification? If we're talking, because specification, again, Ruby, let me know if you think, because there's a lot of terms. There's a lot of terms out there as far, and to me, in my experience with TMF specification, that falls in the line of like the TMF structure, TMF index. Those are all like interchangeable words. I know a couple of organizations that still use TMF specification, but really what that translates to is like a TMF structure, TMF index, a customized TMF reference model. Yes. So when you say drafting, that if that is what it means, and again, feel free to have a follow-up. It's depending on what your organization uses. If you're not using anything and you don't already have, say, like some organizations have homegrown TMF structures but ultimately mapping it to the CDIS TMF reference model is the start. And then again, that is meant to just be a general taxonomy so that it's standardized. The next phase is to customize that to your organization's requirements. It's just a great starting point, and then you map it down, if that's hopefully what it means. But it would always come from the TMF reference model and kind of mapping it, only because and that also, you have to kind of, the considerations there is the type of system that you're using eTMF. If you're using some of the kind of the known ones, the top ones, those are the reason you use the reference model is because they're mapped to that. But if there's some flexibility and you're using, say, like homegrown or still kind of not at that phase, I think that's the idea, is the considerations around that is just seeing how much change and impact having to adopt the TMF reference model would be versus, something else. But those are the reason it's a long answer is that is what LMK does. We support a lot of these types of conversations, guidance. We could do it for you, but those are why it's not a straightforward answer all the time, because we make sure we consider your organization and how steep the change it would be to draft one. So that's my long answer. What do you got?
Okay. Well, I agree with your answer, and I read the question differently. So
Okay, good. In
I
case
still
it's not.
agree with your answer, though. I think the reason I read it differently is because I actually did work for a company where the TMF specifications that is what they called the TMF plan. So
got it.
specifications could be the TMF plan, or it could be
one.
the system configuration, or it could be the index. That depending on what you mean there, but I still agree with Janice's answer that refer back to the TMF reference model, because they do have a template for the plan as well, if that is what you're talking about. And it is, thank goodness, that the TMF reference model, since its inception, has kind of taken over the industry, and we've gotten away from a lot of those proprietary filing structures. And most of the bigs already come with the reference model.
Yeah.
They're configured that way. So the best way to draft it, well, I would hope that you draft a template first for your organization, starting from the TMF reference models tools that they have available, whether you're referring to an index configuration type document or the TMF plan. Start there, because they've already done all this legwork for you, and then take that template and customize it to your needs. And then once you've got an overarching template for your organization, so that you've got consistency across your trials, then you would customize your organizational template to your specific study. And then as far as drafting it, make sure you cover all the big points that are already in that template, right? Like what format is it going to be in? Where is it going to be housed? What are the controls? What is the structure? All of the bits and pieces. How are you going to ensure the quality, completeness, and contemporaneousness? All of those pieces. But get to know your study is the best way to draft a TMF specification. Once you do all of those precursor steps, you have a template at your organization for TMF specifications, then to draft for a specific study, then get to know that study, because they are all unique. Every trial is unique, like snowflakes.
That's great. That was good.
What are your thoughts on companies reducing the size of their TMF teams and applying duties to the individual groups for maintenance? They should hire us. If they're reducing the size of their TMF teams, then they need us. And applying duties to individual groups for maintenance. I see flaws, obviously, that you're giving extra duties to, if that's what's truly happening, you're giving extra duties to existing team members that already have regular full-time jobs. So the TMF is not going to get the time, the attention that it deserves, and you're going to pay for it when you get to that inspection or audit at the end, and it hasn't been maintained throughout. You're going to have that scramble. If that's what this means. There are other aspects. I can also read other aspects into this question that from old school thinking that that's not my job, that's TMF, that the TMF is everybody's responsibility, that all of the functional lines need to do their part to ensure that their section of documents are complete, compliant, contemporaneous. So those duties I don't see as being extra duties. I see that as actually being embedded in the role that you were hired for, and maybe that wasn't communicated early on because the TMF didn't used to get the respect. But now it's coming back around, and they are expecting more of study teams to take that onus of their own documents. And I'm not against that. I think people do need to be accountable for their documents. Don't submit crap to the TMF. It just makes extra work for your TMF team. But as far as
go ahead. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I could talk all day long about how much respect the TMF should get, but
it's tough too, because there might be a need. We've had situations where, like any organization that needs to kind of have considerations to reduce in general, and we're sensitive to that and cognizant, and are aware. Like there are situations where it has to happen, and so it's not to say that we work you know around that. We work through that, and it's finding a strategic solution where if it's exactly what Ruby said. If the document contributors or the TMF contributors have to be the ones to do that work, let's be strategic and find ways that if there isn't a dedicated TMF role, maybe there are ways that we can do the training or support, or leveraging the system to make it lives easier for those TMF contributors that have to. It's learning more about what you can do in the system, tools that you can leverage to facilitate some of the management of it. Oh, we have. Yep, no, it's still the same. Yeah, so it's working. There's just so many different options that for the ones that do have to reduce, team members or size or whatnot, the systems as well as all of the TMF management tools that are out there to facilitate some level of oversight and management of the TMF is there. It's just being able to train, those folks on it. And then maybe it'll get back into a space where they'll be able to go back, and maybe it's temporary and you can go back to having a dedicated TMF person to facilitate. But we're sensitive to that too. And we have done that. It's been training and support, sharing tools and developing tools that they could use. I think that hopefully that helps. That's the last question. Again, we talked quite a bit, and thank you everyone for all of your participation. Really great questions. As you can tell, between me and Ruby, we the way it works with us, it's great because we interpret our questions differently, but hopefully between the two of us, the answers are one of them. And if not, again, we're available, of course, to reach out to for any additional guidance, support questions. We're both, we oversee the operations of our group, but we are TMF people by heart, by nature. So that's what we do. But let's see. I think the last plug is more just to kind of let you guys know our next webinar is on Tuesday, November 19th, same time, 11 Eastern, and it is with our colleagues Jennifer Langelier and Ben Rogers, and it's going to talk about laying the groundwork, effective TMF planning and setup. So yeah, join us at the next one, and hopefully this was helpful. Thanks again for participation. We never know what direction this is going to head in, or if we're but I appreciate all the participation and wanting to, engage with us about the TMF. So thank you so much.
Yes, I enjoyed this break from work as well.
Thanks everyone. Have a good rest of the day.
Join us on the 19th, same time, same place.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.